How's it going, people? Salmon Slabber here, and this is the low to mid-level melee guide for killing the QBD. So, let's get started, shall we? So, first up is, what equipment should you be taking down there with you? Well, as this is the low to mid-level melee guide, this is pretty much what you need. The very minimum, you'll be wanting barrows, simply because you need the armor rating and the life bonus, and bandos and barrows pretty much have identical, so yeah, either one of those will actually do. If you do have the bandos chestplate, by all means take that with you, as it does give you that extra damage bonus, which will help, albeit very slightly. Boots wise, I'd probably recommend getting the bandos boots, as they're not massively expensive and they are a fair chunk better than dragon boots, so I would recommend getting them. Gloves, the barrows gloves will do you, although if you can, by all means try and get Goliaths, as they will be a lot more useful, as they do give quite a huge bonus in armor and life point bonus. And of course if you've got Torva, but then that is for the higher levels. Ring wise, you can actually just take your Ring of Wealth and use that, but I would recommend something with a bit of an armor bonus to it. I'm not sure if the regular Berserker Ring or the Warrior Ring do give an armor bonus, but if they do, I'd highly recommend bringing them along, as it does give you that melee bonus to crit attack as well as an armor boost. Personally, I'm using the Onyx Ring Eye, which really doesn't take all that long to get, to be totally honest, and is worth doing mobilizing armies just to get it, as it is the best ring in the game at the moment. So why not? Fairly simple. Coming to the necklace, obviously the Fury would be your best choice, although you can use the Saradomin necklaces, or at the very least an Army of Glory. I would obviously recommend the Saradomin at the minimum, as the QBD fight does actually deal out quite a fair bit of damage. But yeah, you could probably get away with it with a Glory if you have the stats to cover yourself. Cape wise, I would recommend bringing along a skill cape, simply because it gives you the largest armor bonus, although the Tokarkel does give you a higher crit chance. The lack of armor on it does actually make a fairly substantial difference, so I would recommend bringing along a skill cape if you've got one. If not, then by all means a fire cape or the Tokarkel, or anything with the highest possible armor rating you can reach. So an 80 milestone cape, for example, is another decent one. Surprisingly enough, the milestone capes do have decent armor bonuses. So that is pretty much the armor covered. Onto the weapon. I've personally tried it with a shield and a longsword, but I wouldn't really recommend using it, as, well, basically the accuracy on it means that the fight takes that much longer, and the longer the fight goes on, the more damage you take. And yeah, it's really not worth it. I'd highly recommend getting a Chaotic Maul. I wouldn't really recommend anything lower than the Chaotic Maul, simply because you need the accuracy to be able to land those hits. You probably can get away with using the Zamrock Spear, as that is fairly decent, or one of the God Swords. They would all equally be fairly good. But of course, if you can, get the Chaotic Maul by all means, as it's a kind of stable for all bossing at the moment, as the accuracy bonuses on them are pretty nice, and you really need it to break through the defense of the boss. So, with that said and done, that is the armor covered. So at the very least, you want barrows and the highest possible armor rating you can get in every other slot. The one thing I would highly recommend bringing along is a penance aura if you can, because that will basically prevent you from having to worry about using your prayer pots. Although even without a penance aura, it is fairly simple. You just take 1 or 2 prayer pots with you, typically 1, and that will get you through the fights. Other auras that are highly useful here are the Vampirism aura and the aura that gives you a nice adrenaline boost per hit, an extra 0.5% I think it is. Surprisingly enough, that will add up quite a lot and is worth actually using. So yeah, armor and weapons covered. On to your inventory setup. So here is your inventory setup I would highly recommend using. So on your first line, you'll be wanting an Overload, a Prayer Renewal, a Super Anti-Fire, and an Adrenaline Pot. Obviously this will highly change depending on your herb lore level, but I'll go through that in just a second. This is for those with 96 plus herb lore or fairly high herb lore, just so they can use the Super Anti-Fires. And that's pretty much it. So with that, you got your 4 pots on your top line. Next up you want Dread Nips. I'd highly recommend doing Dominion Tower just to get them. It does add a bit of damage, and by all means you can kill the QBD without Dread Nips. Hell, I've did that for a good few hours worth of trips just as I started doing the QBD, and it really does make a small difference. It does indeed actually make a fairly decent difference, and it is worth bringing them, but it won't prevent you from being able to kill the QBD in any way. So if you've got them, happy days. If you haven't, might want to try working on it, but you're in no rush for it, to be honest. Next up is your pouch. Obviously, if you've got it, a yak would be best. If not, you could use a steel titan, but that is for higher levels. I'll let Pigeon cover that. For this, I'd highly recommend bringing along a turtle. If you can't use a turtle, then the terror bird will do. And if you don't want to bring one of these beast of burdens, then by all means you could also take a Kiat, although the accuracy won't be terribly high, but it can deal a fairly significant amount of damage. And healing wise, you can bring the Titans, the Elemental Titans, as they act as mini unicorns. And they are actually fairly useful because they do attack at the same time. So they are actually fairly good within the QBD. Personally though, I'd highly recommend bringing along a Bob, as the sheer amount of extra food will determine how long you can stay down there without having to bank. And basically, without it, you'll be looking at maybe 1, 2, possibly a third kill with a healing familiar or a attacking familiar. Whereas with the Beast of Burden, you can go from anywhere between 3 and 6, maybe even 7. So yeah, Beast of Burden really does make a massive amount of difference. I'd highly recommend bringing one along. There is a nice little bonus advantage for bringing along the turtle compared to the high levels having to use a yak, and that is the fact that the turtle will actually attack things. Granted, it's not a humongous bonus in damage, but surprisingly enough, those very small hits do actually mount up and will speed up the kill ever so slightly. And at the same time, you don't lose your Beast of Burden effect, as your turtle can carry all your food for you. So yeah, pretty awesome. So this was for the high level herbers. Next is for those using either super attacks or extreme attack strength and defense. So this setup does take up a little bit more of your inventory, but still fairly easy to use against the QBD. So as you can see on the top row now, we have the super attack, super strength and super defense, although in this it is the extremes, as I don't actually have any normal supers on hand. Of course, you'd still want your prayer renewal. They do actually help quite a lot, and it is worth buying them if you cannot actually make them yourself. Adrenaline potions aren't massively necessary, but they will speed up the kill. And of course, you have a regular anti-fire instead of a super anti-fire, although if you can, by all means take it. It will save you quite a lot of actual health, and it does mean you get those extra kills in. Everything else is exactly the same though. You can use sharks, rocktails, whichever you prefer. At the moment sharks are incredibly cheap, so it does make bossing immensely viable, and you can actually make profit on pretty much everything you do. Dreadnips again, as we said before, if you've got them, hell, use them. If you haven't, then I wouldn't worry about it, but I would try and work towards getting them. And of course, the Beast of Burden, as I just discussed, I'd highly recommend again the Beast of Burden. It is probably the better choice out of all of them. At least that's how I feel personally. So that is pretty much it for your inventory. Now we move on to your skill bar itself. So this one, there's a lot of variations you can have, although personally, after doing QBD for over 200 kills now, this is kind of what I find to be the most useful and kind of the most balanced between all of them. So first thing you'll probably note is on number 6, I actually have my food in there. The reason for that is, if you have your food within your action bar and you happen to eat it, then you will not stop running, which is pretty crucial, as when you're trying to get to the dragon artifacts, you sometimes do actually need to heat while on the move, so it is incredibly useful for that. Additionally, while you're doing your skills, for example, you could press 1 for slice, and then at the same time eat a shark, and your attack will still go off, and then you can carry on attacking, and there's like no downtime between. So it is very useful to have food within your action bar, hence why it's on number 6. You can rearrange these however you wish, but this is just how I've got used to them. On F, as you can see, we got Dreadnips. If you don't have your Dreadnips with you, then this can be replaced by scrolls from your pet, or your summon I should say, or simply by another skill altogether. It is entirely up to you. I would recommend though, if you don't have Dreadnips or you don't want to use Dreadnips within your action bar, that you want to use Overpower, which is a two-handed or melee ultimate ability. The reason for that is sometimes you'll get your adrenaline up to max and Berserk won't be ready, but sometimes Meteor Strike you won't be able to use if QBD is below 50% HP, which is why you want to use Overpower, as it is 200 to 400% bonus to your attack damage. So that is the one I'd recommend replacing that with if you do not use Dreadnips. So basically, in order of these, the first one, simply Slice. This is a very quickly regenerating skill, gotta be honest. Doesn't really take long at all to recharge, and is pretty much your spammable attack. Next up on 2 is Cleave, which is kind of like a conal AoE. Again, it's actually got pretty small cooldown time, and you kind of go in the 1-2 combo. So you're using Slice, then Cleave, Slice, Cleave, Slice, Cleave. It is that little quick combo, so you're constantly attacking. Next up is Fury on 3. This is a 3-hit little attack, which basically lasts 6 seconds. It does give a slight bonus to your base damage attack. And basically the main reason to use it is whilst you're berserked, that kind of turns into an assault without being under the berserk benefit. So let's say assault typically hits 2000s and fury hits 1000s. Well, when you're under the berserk status, your fury suddenly hits 2500s and your berserk will be hitting 5Ks. That's the reason for having fury on there. Plus it does buy some time if you're waiting for skills to recover, as it does still hit 3 times. So it is really useful to have, and I'd highly recommend using it. Fourth, we have Punish, which is another spammable skill. The cooldown timer on it is actually very, very small, and that is pretty much the only reason we have it in there. Plus it does give it a little bit of a bonus. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's why it's there. Spammable skills. So 5, we've got, I can't remember what this one's called, but it does a massive amount of damage. Especially when you're under Berserk, you'll notice that this thing can knock off 5k damages, which is, well, immense pretty much for a normal skill. It has got a slightly long cooldown time though, but you can use it fairly often compared to Assault, for example. So yeah, I would recommend chucking that in there, as it is like your high damage hit skill, and is well worth using. 6 is Food. Personally, I use this just to split up the quick skills with the rest of them, the threshold skills and the ultimates, but you can place it wherever you want. I find it much easier for me personally if it's on 6, as I kind of know where 6 is automatically, and I can press every single other key on the keyboard for the rest of the skills with one hand always on 6, well, one finger always on it. So yeah, that's the reason why it's there. You can always move it personally though. Next up we got Assault. This is your bread and butter skill. This will rape QBD, quite literally. Without being under the effects of Berserk, this thing will knock off 3k damages without any trouble at all. It is a 3-hit threshold skill as well, so you're likely to get 9k damage out of it. Pretty good, yeah? Well, then we use Berserk later on, and then we use Assault. And Assault suddenly turns into a 15k skill. You'll be taking off 15k health just by using Assault. It is awesome. It is hands down the best skill you have to use against QBD. And pretty much everywhere else in RuneScape for that matter. It is amazing. Get it. So number 8 is Smash. This is actually just a normal skill, and it's another spammable. Sometimes you'll find that when you're using Slice and then Cleave, well, for the sake of easiness, I'll just say numbers for now. Typically your combo is 1-2, 1-4, 1-2, 1-4, but if for whatever reason 2 and 4 are on cooldown and you can't use them, that's what this Smash is for, number 8. So it'll be 1-2, 1-4, 1-8, 1-2, 1-4, 1-8, and it's basically a massive cycle, so you're constantly attacking the QBD. Next up on number 9 is Cyclone, or as I like to say, AoE! And yeah, it's basically a massive AoE effect. And you really do need this against the QBD, as the QBD does spawn shades. And the shades can knock off about 1000 damage, I think it is, on their typical attack, their little spin around attack thing. Very annoying, but with the AoEs you can kill them typically in one shot. If not, you'll almost annihilate them, and all they need is a quick tap and they're down. That is the reason why it's in there. It is a threshold ability, and so is the next one. So on 0 we have the other AoE, and this is basically the only time you'd ever use it is if, for example, you've just used Hurricane, the other AoE on number 9. If you've used that, and let's say the shades have still got about 200 HP, you'd follow up with this AoE just to finish them off. Simple as that. That's all it's there for. Those two are literally just for crowd control. So when the shades are there, you just AoE, wipe them out, happy days, and then you can carry on focusing on the QBD. And it will save you taking quite a bit of damage from those shades. So last but not least is the ultimate ability, Berserk. So this lowers your defense, but in turn increases your offense, and it lasts a couple of seconds. This is amazing. This will basically allow you to annihilate one single form of the QBD almost instantly. It will drop like a sack of shit. This is the only ultimate you actually need against QBD. You can use Overpower, as I said before, but yeah. Berserk is awesome. This is the one you want. So that's pretty much all the skills covered. Of course you can mix them up a bit, but I would highly recommend all of those there that I'm actually using. You can switch out Smash for something else if you wish, as it is literally just a placeholder. There's not many other skills in there that you'd actually want to use, but yeah. If you need something else in there, go ahead. Anticipation would be a handy one to have instead of Smash, as that does reduce the amount of damage you take for a little bit. Just a small amount, but yeah, it's kind of handy. For those lower levels, you may find it much more useful than having Smash there, but for those with higher defense and stuff, I'd stick with Smash, all-out offense. But yeah, with that said and done, let's go to the actual fight then, and our little pre-battle preparation things. So, on to the pre-battle preparations then. So, first off, if you want to, you can actually use the bonfire before you head in. I would recommend it, as it does give you that slight increase to your HP. But of course, it's not actually necessary. So, easy way to do it is straight out from your bank. You'll either be in Edgeville Bank or the Player and Ports Bank is probably your best bet, as the Pop Bank is right next to the surface entrance to the QBD, and the Edgeville Bank is pretty right next to the Lowstone, so they're both closest to the bank, pretty much. Easiest way to get there and refill all your inventory with food and stuff. So once you're here, just get your max HP up through your bonfire, and as soon as you've done that, head back into the bank, and if you're using the Beast of Burden as recommended, simply fill up your Beast of Burden. If you're using the Cat or an Attack Titan, then obviously all you'll need is your scrolls in your inventory. One thing to point out though is it is nice to have a Ring of Wealth with you and keep it in your inventory, as it does affect what you get out of the box after killing the QBD. So I would recommend bringing it along, but I wouldn't recommend really equipping it if you've got something else you can use to actually kill the QBD with. So as soon as you're ready, head down to Port Sarim, and almost directly northwest of the Lodestone, you'll find this little cave entrance here. Head on in and follow this pathway down, and then on the south side, as soon as you exit, you will see the little cave entrance you can slide down to get to the QBD. So once you're down here, if for whatever reason you happen to die while killing the QBD, your gravestone will appear just outside here. And you'll very often find that if other people are doing the QBD, they will bless graves as they pass by. So you don't really have much to worry about. Besides that, it is very easy to get back here from the Port Sarim Lodestone, well within the time limit of your grave. So, starting the QBD then. I've slowed this down for the first section, just so I can try and explain all the little details. So exactly where I'm pointing right now, this is where you want to stand throughout the entirety of the fight. The reason for this is you can stand here and the firewall barrages that she throws out, the one which has the hole in the center, this is where you need to stand to avoid it. For the most part, we're just gonna, well, we will just stand and tank all the firewalls, so we will be taking a fair amount of damage. This is the best place to stand so you avoid at least some of it. Additionally, as soon as you start, you want to activate your penance aura if you've brought it, or whatever other auras you're currently using. And of course, then you want to take your attack pots, so overload or extremes or supers, knock all them down, also your prayer renewal, and finally your super anti-fire or your normal anti-fire pot. Don't take your adrenaline potion now if you brought one with you, we'll be using that later. At the same time, you want to activate your prayers. For this, I'd recommend either Soul Split or Protect from Mage or Melee, depending on which one you're getting beaten by more. Additionally, turmoil or whatever stat boosting praise you do actually have, so super strength boost, attack boost, defense boost. All of those need to be activated at the same time. So as soon as you've done that, go ahead and start attacking the QBD. The order of attacks I typically use is 1, 2, 3, then 5, and then recycle 1 and 4 until you hit the threshold mark, then finally use Assault. The reason for this is when you do 1, 2, 3, it's just a quick little cycle. You go through 2 very quick renewing with very low cooldown skills, and then you hit Fury, which is a 6-second 3-hit skill, and it can deal a fairly decent amount of damage, I've got to be honest. You follow that up next with 5, as that's got a fairly long cooldown time, but it can hit very hard, as you've just seen. Then you follow it up again with your 1 and 4, and then 1, 2, until you hit your threshold, like that. As soon as you hit your threshold, the Almighty Assault becomes available, so straight away you want to use that, as the cooldown timer on it does take a while. But as you see, it can knock out some pretty hefty numbers. It is well worth using. It is the best skill, and this is the time you want to use it, because the cooldown timer is that long. By the time we finally get past this first stage of the QBD, it'll have recharged in time for us to use it on the second form, which you will see in just a moment, the game plan. So as soon as you've used Assault, the only thing left to do now is constantly keep attacking the QBD. If you've brought your Dread Nips along with you, use your Dread Nips whenever they're available, as the extra little bit of damage will help quite a lot. And eventually you'll wipe out the first form of the QBD. In this form, her only attacks is little headbutt attacks. She will use a Fire Breath and 1 single Firewall. Not much to worry about, and we don't particularly care, as we're pretty much ignoring all of her attacks for the most part. As soon as you've killed the first form, this central pillar will actually start to glow. You must get to these as soon as possible. The reason for this, as you see there, she spits out grot worms, and these do attack you with magic. And as we're using melee armor, this is the worst thing for us. But they do take a while to kill, so I would generally ignore them. If you're a very low level and your stats are fairly low, I would recommend simply killing all these grot worms as soon as you see them, as the amount of damage they will inflict will be fairly substantial. So yeah. Right, so this is the crucial skill now. This is the second form. At this point you've got full adrenaline. As soon as it starts getting into normal position, use Berserk, instantly follow up by attacking it with a skill, and at the same time simultaneously taking a dose of your adrenaline potion. You'll notice that your adrenaline goes from nothing up to quarter way almost instantly. And the reason for this is we want to get to our threshold as soon as possible to knock out that assault. If, like me, you misclick on the QBD, there's nothing to panic about. Just try to maneuver back into position at the same time as attacking the QBD. You do have about 10 seconds before the Berserk runs out, so there's more than enough time for you to do this. And as you can see, threshold is almost instantly. And straight away, as soon as it's available, use your Assault. And look at those figures coming out now. Just like I said, Assault is amazing against QBD. And with that, just using Berserk, getting up to threshold level, and using Assault, we've already killed the second form. That's how quick the second form is. I can't even explain everything you need to do within the time period, even though it's been slowed down. As soon as it's dead, the next pillar that will light up is the one on the west side, or as you're looking at the screen, the bottom. So you want to quickly rush down to here. Typically 2 grot worms will be able to get out of the QBD at this point. So if you are a low level and you're killing these grot worms as soon as you see them, you'll want to kill both of these now. If you happen to kind of like miss the fact that it's available, then it will take you a bit longer, and you may even find 3 or 4 grot worms. If you find multiple grot worms, the rounds do become quite a lot harder because the amount of damage you're taking increases substantially. So I'll speed this up a bit now so it's a bit easier. You pretty much follow the exact same tactics as before. The third round, you want to hold back from using any ultimate abilities, as you'll want that ability to go instant berserk on the 4th round, as the 4th round is the most damaging round. As you can see here, QBD has just turned blue. This means she's now weak to melee attacks. Fury is very good to use at this point, as well as Assault, because you'll find it's similar to the effect of having Berserk active. Your Assaults will knock out 5k damages, and your Furies will knock out 2k plus damages. But still, the armor rating is still fairly high, so it is kind of hard to actually hit the QBD, and you will find you'll miss sometimes even entire assault attacks. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The 3rd form is pretty straightforward. Run through your recyclable skills, so 1, 2, 1, 4, 1, 8, 1, 2, 1, 4, 1, 8, and then Fury whenever it's available, as well as number 5. And then Assault if it's available, but if it's close to death, then I'd probably hold back on using Assault, as even without an Adrenaline Potion, you can use Berserk and get up to threshold level and use Assault before it runs out, and Assault will actually have the full effect of Berserk. So as you can see now, I'm at full ultimate Adrenaline bar, but I'm not going to actually use it, as it's very useful for the 4th. I will, however, recommend if you're at full like me, and you're stuck at full, if you happen to need healing, take 1 chunk of food, then use a skill, then take another chunk of food and use a skill. This way you'll be very close to the Adrenaline bar max, as you can see on screen now, but at the same time your HP will also be at max. So very, very useful. So as soon as the 3rd form's dead, the top crystal will actually start to glow. That's the one we need to grab. As soon as it's done, run straight back to the QBD. If shades happen to be out, this can be slightly problematic, especially if time stop happens, but typically you should be okay. But as soon as you're back, use a skill. As soon as your ult is up, instantly use Berserk. And this time you want to cycle through 1, 2, 1, 4, 1, 8. All your very quick ones. Do not use Fury, or yeah, it's just Fury you want to avoid, as it doesn't give you massive amounts of adrenaline. This is an attack you need to be very, very careful of in the 4th form, as this will annihilate your HP even from max instantly. That I would highly recommend dodging every single time, as it will knock you for about 1,900 damage every 1.5 seconds, I think it is. So yeah, I would avoid that. You just need to get out of the centre of the room, just head down to either of the sides, just to stay out of the way of it. And as you can see, before Berserk is even ended, QBD is pretty much dead. The other thing to worry about in the 4th form is time stop and the 4 shades appearing all at once, as all 4 shades will attack you with that dodgy black circle thing, and that can deal quite a massive amount of damage, and sometimes QBD will pair it up with that super flame. So yeah, you can be instantly KO'd if you're not careful. So you just need to keep an eye out, pretty much. But that's pretty much it. That is the 4th form done and dusted. That is the entire QBD fight in a nutshell, broken down as much as possible. Tactics are straightforward, there's not much to it. The first round you just build up adrenaline, use Assault as soon as it's ready, then hold back your ultimate for the 2nd form. As soon as you hit the 2nd form, go all out, instantly use Berserk, Adrenaline Pot, and rush to threshold to use Assault. Rip it a new one, you'll probably kill it instantly, you normally do. And then 3rd form, build up adrenaline again, exactly the same as the 1st form, and try to keep your HP as high as possible. And then 4th form finally, just go all out and try and annihilate it as fast as possible, instantly using Berserk and ripping through it. One other thing to note is, when you reach this box, remember to check your Ring of Wealth on, and occasionally you will get Rocktails from it. If you do get Rocktails or even Saradomin Brews from it, I highly recommend taking them out now and having them in your inventory, as with the extra healing you're technically getting for free, that will mean that you can kill more QBDs in one trip. And I'll show you what I mean now. So the rest of this footage now is all from exactly the same trip. This is 1 inventory worth, and it is a fairly successful trip. But the tactics are the same every time. As soon as you enter, prayer up, all your pots up, cast your Dreadnought out as soon as you attack the QBD, rip through the first form, use Assault once, then build up all your Adrenaline, hit the central pillar. Second form, instantly use Berserk, follow up by Adrenaline pot, use Fury and your other skills, rip through Assault, you'll kill it almost instantly, on to the next form. Third form, again, is just build up Adrenaline as much as possible, as you will take a fair amount of damage in the third one. Try to keep your Adrenaline at max and at the same time as keeping your HP at max. Remember all throughout the fight, summoning a Dreadnought. Fourth form, exactly the same as the second. As soon as you go max, Berserk it up and rip through it, cast Assault, and pretty much annihilate it. And that is it. So this is the second one, instantly equip the Ring of Wealth. This time I've got Rocktails, as you can see. Instantly take them out and bank everything else. And as you can see, I've done 2 trips now and I've still got an entire inventory of food. As well as my Beast of Burden having a massive chunk of food. So sometimes you're lucky and you'll get those Rocktails, other times you won't be so lucky and you won't get any at all some trips. But not to worry, well, it's easy enough to do. You should be able to get at very least the first time starting this QBD. If you've got 99 stats and similar gear to me, you should get about 2 kills fairly often without fail for the most part, especially after you've done it for a little bit and you've got the tactics down. For the lower levels, you may find you only get 1 depending on your stats. Others may be able to get 2, possibly a 3rd kill. It quite literally depends on your stats, how quickly you can get to those artifacts so there's less grotworms out to kill you. And general paying attention. And again, you can use the Rejuvenate ability in between the fights as you're opening this chest if you've got a lot of Adrenaline left. That can help out quite a lot when healing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. There's only one other thing to worry about while doing the QBD, and that is time stop. So time stop, you only get it on the very last form of the QBD. It's the last, 4th and final form. And basically what happens is she'll summon 4 shades, and then randomly you'll notice 1 shade will disappear on either the south or the north side tip of this little island we're standing on. And he'll randomly have some chatter above his head. He'll just start chanting some random stuff. Doesn't particularly matter. Those are the ones you must kill to prevent time stop. The reason why you want to stop it from casting time stop is quite literally time will freeze for a good 10-15 seconds. And within that time you cannot heal, you can't even see if you're taking damage. And if you're standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, for example, let's say you're in the middle exactly where I'm standing now and she uses that super breath, you're gonna die. Without a shadow of a doubt, you'll be dead. So time stop is hands down the deadliest part of killing the QBD. Although sometimes you can get it so you get time stopped and you'll notice you've taken no damage at all. That is pure luck. No skill involved in being time stopped at all. It is quite literally all about luck. Yeah, the tactic for killing the QBD, exactly the same every single fight. I don't change anything I do. It is identical every time. As soon as shades spawn, use your AoEs, wipe them out. Keep Dreadnips up all the time. Keep your health topped. And then follow the general rule. Just keep your Adrenaline up for the first. Berserk and Annihilate on the second. Adrenaline up on the third. Annihilate on the fourth. Now as you can see, I'm kind of lucking out on this one. I'm getting Rocktails fairly often. So my trips are going to be... Oh, I'm going to complete all of these trips. There you go. This is the 6th trip. Well, 6th kill in one trip, I should say. And this is only using the Turtle and Bando's gear. So as you can tell, if you're using Tulva or anything, you can probably double up on what pots you're taking. As it's highly likely that you're going to be getting up to 12 kills. Yeah, that's it. It's pretty straightforward. Honest to God, even if you're a lower level, as long as you've got high enough stats to equip barrows and stuff, I'd probably recommend at least 80 in attack, strength and defense. Give it a go, honestly. Your gravestone will only appear just outside the QBD lair, and it's very easy to get back to. You'll easily get back there within the 5-10 minutes of your gravestone limit. And you'll even find people bless it for you. And yeah, there's no reason not to do the QBD. It is really, really easy, especially once you get the hang of it. and it is some very good money. Just to show you, I'll actually show you what I made. So let's find all this stuff here. This is pretty much everything we got from the QBD, I think. So it's a 350k cash. I think that's it. Oh, we've also got the super restores, but I'll leave them in there for now. They ain't worth a massive amount. Yeah, got all the herbs and stuff. And obviously, yeah, you've got the bolts, but I can't remember how many I've got, as I'm just kind of stockpiling them. So yeah, minus the bolts and super restore pots, let's see what it all comes to. We've got 350k cash within the bank, and then this stuff. So altogether, we've got 320k here, plus the 350, so yeah, a nice close enough 1.2 mil. And that's one trip, which altogether took about 25-30 minutes, something like that. So, a mil and a half hour, can't really complain. It's quite easy to do, fun to do as well, doesn't really cost a lot, and it's worth doing. Give it a go, people, give it a go.